Welcome to Just Thinking. The town election is on May 21st, and to help you learn about the candidates, I will be interviewing each one that is running for a contested seat. I will ask the same questions of each candidate for an office so we can compare and draw our own conclusions from their responses. These interviews run about 20 minutes each and can be found on the Holliston Cable Access Facebook page and at www.hcattv.org, so you can watch anywhere and anytime. So, my guest now and candidate is Tina Hein, and Tina is running for Selectman. Or do you go by Select Woman?
I would say Select Woman,
okay.
Yes.
I'm not going to enter into that conversation, having served in the office and so forth, but we all come away with our own opinions. So, why are you interested in this particular position?
Well, I have had many experiences before the board over the past several months, and I have seen a need for change on the board, and I think that I can bring that change. So I think that I have skills from my career in healthcare, from my career in higher education, that would serve the town of Holliston well, and I think that applying those skills to the Board of Selectmen could bring some positive change.
Okay. Describe the specific skills and experience that you bring.
Well, so first and foremost, coming out of a 20-plus year in healthcare as a physical therapist, the idea of being a team player is something that is just intuitive and natural to me. And I believe that a board works well when it collaborates with many. So I believe the Board of Selectmen works well when they draw from the opinions and the feedback of residents, of volunteers, of committees, and other boards in town. And I believe that I would bring the ability to do that well, just simply, not simply, but in large part because that's been my entire career, working as a team player in a very complicated environment, an acute care facility, which is where I've worked for the majority of my career. So
I didn't ask you about you to tell us a bit about yourself, so why don't you go ahead and do that?
Sure.
So professionally, you are in healthcare, you teach?
Yep. So I graduated in 1995 with a master's degree in physical therapy, and I've been practicing since. My majority of my career, as I mentioned before, is as an acute care physical therapist. So working in the intensive care unit, working at University of Michigan Medical Center, at Milford Regional Medical Center, and then in acute rehab as well at Spalding. So that's a very acute, high level of intensity type of patient care. That's the majority of my clinical practice. And then alongside that, for the past 20 years, I've worked in higher education in some way, shape, or form, either as a lab assistant or most recently 8 years as a professor at Bay State College in Boston.
Okay. So do you have any local government experience?
I have not been in local government aside from being on the Rail Trail Committee many years ago. I think I was pregnant with my second of 4 children, so it's been a while. He's now in college. But I have had local government experience as a consumer or as a user of local government appearing before the Board of Selectmen. So that's my most recent experience with local government.
And why don't you just explain a little bit about that experience? I mean, that's
Sure.
part of your background.
Right, yeah. So we've, in Mudville, I think everybody who's watching this TV show is well aware of the issues that have been in the Holliston Reporter and elsewhere in terms of cut-through traffic in Mudville. And so as a sort of advocate for my neighbors, I've stepped forward over the past several months, beginning really last May, so about a year ago, and sort of surveyed my neighbors, spent many hours, many conversations getting a sense of how my neighbors feel about it, and then bringing that before the board. Along with that, there was plenty of research, plenty of reading, plenty of talking to other town departments, in addition to the board, and also talking to consultants who the town works with to kind of get a sense of what's reasonable as an approach to solving some of the real significant safety problems we were seeing and the erosion of our neighborhood from some of the traffic issues. And so that's been my most recent experience before the board, and it's been a profound one.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you if you've attended selectmen's meetings because you just said that and so forth. So what do you think are the 3 most important functions of the Board of Selectmen?
I'm going to say to effectively regulate traffic. That is a very significant function of the Board of Selectmen. I think that it's just common sense if we're going to talk about providing a quality of life for our residents in our residential neighborhoods. I think that traffic and the speed of which it travels and the volume at which it travels and the changes that we're seeing over time as development in the region occurs, I think that it has a profound effect on the quality of life of our residents. And I think it's just common sense also to look at traffic and the appropriate, effective regulation of it if we're talking about growing our downtown, improving our downtown, the retail businesses that exist in our downtowns, and not just along Washington at Central Street, but other areas too. Traffic is a big piece of why people come into Holliston, or it's a big part, rather, of coming into any of these retail areas. And I think it needs to be effectively regulated to see the full potential, not only, again, for our residents in our residential neighborhoods, but also for the businesses in town. I think it's just absolute common sense to put that as a priority issue. The look and feel of our downtown is affected by traffic, and the look and feel of our residential neighborhoods is affected by traffic.
So what are the two other issues besides traffic that you think are the most important for the selectmen?
I think that the Board of Selectmen has a role to to function as a liaison between boards and committees in town, and I think that to do that job well is an important thing. Most recently, coming up for town meeting are the positions of the facilities manager and the sustainability coordinator. Those two positions have been brought forward with a lot of support from dedicated volunteers and individuals in different departments in town. And I think that to function as a liaison between, say, the Finance Committee as a Board of Selectmen member is important, because I think that would give the opportunity to bring those two positions to town meeting through the warrant with a budget attached that would let residents then have the final say on whether or not they value the position of facilities coordinator or facilities manager or sustainability coordinator. And so I think that takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of dialogue, and openness to that process. So again, I'd say the function as a liaison between boards and committees is important. And then the third, I think you asked for three. The third is to be bold and push forward a vision for Holliston. I think that there are challenges that this town faces, that our town faces. I think things are changing, not for the worse, not for the better, but they're changing, and I think it takes a bold leadership to develop a vision and hold on to that vision and make all of the small little decisions that fall under the vision to support it. So I think those three, I'd say, are the most important functions.
Okay. What is the top change, improvement, or service you want to see in place at the end of your 3-year term should you be elected?
Well, I'm going to come right back to traffic, but not traffic so much as I would say that we are a more walkable, pedestrian-friendly town. I think it affects every level of living in town. I think it affects our access to parks and recs, the wonderful parks and trails, the rail trail I'm referring to. I think that's tied to walkability and pedestrian access. I think our schools are tied to having improved walkability and pedestrian access. I think certainly our downtown. I think, again, all of our residential neighborhoods benefit from improved walkability and a pedestrian-friendly approach to decisions being made in town. And I think our seniors benefit from accessibility and a more pedestrian-friendly town. So I'm going to say at the end of 3 years that residents see and feel an improvement in walkability, and they see that decisions are made with a pedestrian-first approach.
Okay. Common opinion is that Holliston has been a popular community for families looking to move here because of our schools, and this has increased our property values. Do you think this is true?
So I thought long and hard about this question. I think your viewers know that the questions were given out ahead of time.
So.
Yes. And so I really thought long and hard about that question. And the first and best answer, and the only answer is, of course, yes. Of course, I feel that our schools are our #1 asset. I'm a product of our public schools. My 4 children are products of the public schools, and I'm watching my 2 college-age students, children, do extremely well. They were ready to go off to college, and I think that Holliston, the public schools in Holliston, prepared them well. So, from my own personal experience, for myself and my 4 kids, I can say yes, that it is Holliston's biggest and #1 asset. I will second that, though, with the following comment, which is that our children are also prepared for the big wide world, prepared to be young adults through support and involvement in other communities in Holliston as well. So it's not just the school community. It's for example, one example would be our faith communities. So my kids have graduated and have gone off to college with classmates who were bar mitzvahed or bat mitzvahed at the temple in town, or were altar servers at the Catholic Church in town. And those faith communities also build these children into the young adults that they're going to be and succeeding in the world. And those faith communities, again, as one example, they rely on diversity of age, diversity of income, diversity of background. And so Holliston is best served by being a town that embraces that diversity, because it's not just our public schools that raises these kids, our kids, to be the wonderful people that they are.
Okay. So a Facebook question from a resident. What are your thoughts about the former Gulf Station downtown, and is there anything that the town could do with it in the future? What would you propose? You do understand that it's privately owned, and I just want to get out there that, we're just sort of talking about it as sort of an idea.
Sure. I mean, as it exists now, it's certainly an eyesore. But as you allude to, and as my conversation with the town administrator confirms, that it's not being sold. It's owned by the current owner, and that's for the foreseeable future. So I think that what is maybe an interesting conversation related to that question is 9 Green Street right behind it. They basically exist in the same space, so to speak, in terms of downtown, and I think that 9 Green Street offers an incredible opportunity to have a real positive change for the downtown. So if we're talking about 9 Green Street, one could say in theory we're talking about the Gulf Station, if that were to come up as something that the town could acquire. But speaking of 9 Green Street, I would say that the committee that was formed has a charge, and I think when I look at that charge for the committee, I would change it. I would change it to say that it's not simply resell, it's not simply do nothing, it's not simply develop for parking. I think that's a very limited charge for that committee, and I think that because 9 Green Street, or say the Gulf Station, occupies such a critical key piece in our downtown, and our downtown has so much potential, I would say that the charge for the committee for 9 Green Street really should include things, multi-use ideas. So any RFP that comes in should really be looking at affordable senior housing. It should be looking at open space. It should be looking at maybe some new parking, not entirely, but maybe some additional parking that could serve Goodwill Park, and maybe it could be used to address sort of accessing or exiting current parking downtown. So I think that if I were on the board, I would look to increase the charge, broaden the charge.
Okay. What is your personal vision for what Holliston will look like, feel like 5 to 10 years from now? And what would be different from today?
5 to 10 years from now. Well, I'm going to come right back to traffic and walkability and say that, our region is only going to see more development and growth. Those are the projections for Metro West, and that directly affects Holliston. And so I would like to see that there's a much more proactive approach to managing that and calming traffic and improving walkability. I think that 5 to 10 years from now, the public schools will be the best 21st century version of their current state, that the library will be the best 21st century version of its current state. I think those are very important. I think those would be some key things that I'd, if I had a crystal ball, would say would be in place 5 to 10 years from now.
I'm going to push back at you. This was not a question, but you talk about the traffic a lot, and I know you have a personal passion in, that you're very interested in it. When you were at the selectmen's meetings and you did research, you were very animated about what you learned from doing all of that investigation. I'm very curious about what exactly is it that you can do. So you're sitting on a board of selectmen as one member of 3. What is it that you can do about the traffic?
I think there are more than a few things. I think first and foremost, you can set thresholds for any decision that is related to planning and design, to infrastructure and so on. You can set a threshold where those plans, those designs, those decisions need to address pedestrian safety. So you can put a pedestrian-first approach to any plan, any design, any infrastructure proposal that's coming forward. How does this particular plan, design, change benefit the pedestrian? I think that's one thing. That's in the future. Right now, I think what we can do is develop a traffic advisory committee. This is a very common sense, low to no cost idea that brings together key players in town to address resident concerns and safety concerns where they may exist related to traffic, and can come up as a committee, can brainstorm to come up with ideas and ways to calm that traffic. And so along with that, I think we can create a toolbox that something like a traffic advisory committee can use. And so I'm very pleased that Article 27 is on the town warrant to allow, if it voted yes, to allow the town to adopt the 2016 state law that would give the town the authority to lower speeds to 25 or in a safety zone 20 miles an hour. And I just want to be really clear that that does not by any stretch mean the entire town goes to 25 miles an hour if we vote yes. But it would become a tool that could be used by something like a traffic advisory committee to look to see where can we implement this, where does it make sense, where are we seeing a problem, and where do we need to address the problem. So that's one tool you can put in that toolbox. But I think that there are other things too. I think that there are pedestrian activated crosswalks. I think that there are stealth radar systems that you can use to sort of track and collect data at a very low cost for the town. And so I would create a traffic advisory committee, and I would create a toolbox, or encourage them to create a toolbox that they could then use to affect traffic calming.
For people who don't understand, historically, changing the speed of even your own street in Holliston, even if it's a little street, was always a big case of going to the state and asking permission and having to document all kinds of stuff. So now this new law is just turning that back to the town to enable us to say, okay, and in my past, South Street was a place that we had talked about changing speeds years and years and years ago, because not only do you have cars racing down there, you often have trucks because they're cutting from 495 over. So it's not like, or at least I don't want to put words in your mouth, downtown's not the only place we have a traffic issue.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I hope I was clear on that earlier. I mean, I think our residential neighborhoods, I mean, it's the majority of the town are our residential neighborhoods, and those need to be safe places, and those need to be pedestrian-friendly places. Those needs to be a place that are a community that livable. So the idea is livable streets where you can come out of your home and engage with your neighbors and your community through your street, that the streets don't just belong to cars. And that is not a radical or disruptive idea. It is one that is embraced wholeheartedly at the state level, at the regional level, at the national level, at the international level. I mean, this is a very strong stance to take.
All right. So, in looking at the vision going forward, what do you think the role of the Board of Selectmen is in fulfilling that vision?
I mean, I'm going to come back to, again, collaboration, open dialogue, discussion with departments, with committees, welcoming and encouraging the input from volunteers. I recognize and appreciate that as a select woman, you can't just be a ballot box responding to this resident concern or that resident concern or this special interest or that special interest concern. I do recognize that, and I also acknowledge that, you know, not coming from an experience of being an official in local government, I understand that that's a challenging job, but I do think from my experiences before the board that there's a lot of opportunity for more dialogue, more discussion, and I think that's what it would take to push forward a bold vision for Holliston in the future, to welcome the views and the opinions and the ideas of the dedicated volunteers that form our committees, and the dedicated, skilled, good people who work in our different departments, to really bring those folks together in a collaborative way to push forward a vision. And with that vision, you need to have community input. And I think that there are many opportunities and methods by which you can get that community input. And I would seek to get that, because I think that is a key thing to defining what the vision for Holliston is. I may feel one way about, say, traffic. Somebody else may feel a completely different way. And I think we can do a really good job, a much more of a job to build consensus in terms of what are the priorities in Holliston that the residents feel, and then bring that forward to the different departments and committees, and then hold everybody accountable to pushing that vision forward through small decisions, through big decisions. This is, you know, as an educator and as a professional in healthcare, this is how we function. So it's just, it makes so much sense to me that this would benefit the town.
Okay, you get time to do a final pitch for yourself.
Okay, so may I read from my reference?
You might want to, you can reference it, but I will warn you that looking at the top of your head is not the best view.
So what I'm going to say is that 15 years ago, or more, but I'm going to say 15 years ago, there was a bold vision for a trail in town, a 6+ mile trail through the center of town. And at the time, it wasn't necessarily fully embraced by the leadership in town, by the residents in town. It was a bold vision. And today, we see that vision, you know, almost fully executed, and it's a wonderful thing. It has benefited the town in so many ways. And to much credit to the current leadership for supporting the Rail Trail Committee and all that they do, and supporting the idea of a trail. But to the dedicated volunteers who have been on that trail committee, I think that really speaks to the power of a dedicated group of volunteers who come forward with good ideas from the town. We have benefited and will continue to benefit. Our town is stronger for having the trail. And so along with that, I think that we have many other bold visions before the town that we can and should embrace. I think, again, as I mentioned before, a 21st century school, a 21st century library, these are bold visions that I think that we should be embracing as a town. I do think tackling traffic congestion or traffic calming is some of the measures by which we do that may feel bold, but I think that that's a very important thing. I think also senior affordable housing, or affordable senior housing, is there are a lot of really bold ideas, creative ideas on how to do that well, to give seniors independence, to give them accessibility, and to give them a place of value in our community. And I think that that's also a bold idea. And so I think that that's something the board should be a part of and be pushing forward.
Okay.
I hope to be a part of that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Now that the candidates have shared their views, please be sure to do your part and vote on May 21st at the high school field house between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. Turnout for the town election in 2017 was 11%, just 1,100 voters. In 2018, 16% turned out. We'd like to beat that this year and hit 20% or more. There are also 2 questions on the ballot about retail marijuana to bring town bylaws into line with the latest state regulations. Local government hits you at home and is where you have the biggest influence, and Holliston is the living model of true democracy. Please participate. Thanks.